At L&M Fine Jewelry, we hand select our diamonds to give you the very best prices possible. Monty knows a great deal when he finds one. Find your great deal at L&M Fine Jewelry.
Your diamond destination.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Samuel Akem here, and I am back with another one. I appreciate you guys for tapping in to yet another Tuesday video. We got a ton to cover today. The FCS playoff bracket has been revealed. We are also going to react to Cat Grizz. UC Davis and Sac State played a really tight game. We're going to react to that. We're going to be talking about also the North Dakota State versus South Dakota game. That was a big game in the FCS, also a big game in the Missouri Valley. We are also going to talk about the FCS playoff bracket reveal. I'm going to go over the bracket, say my thoughts about it, say where I think teams ended up, and all of that good stuff. I'm going to give some early playoff predictions of, where I think some teams may be ending up in the second round and where they may not. And then we're going to give our Big Sky regular season recap. We're going to talk about the top Big Sky performances from the final season of the regular season. And then I'm going to give my picks for the awards in the Big Sky. So Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, and Freshman of the Year, as well as Coach of the Year, which I forgot to put on here, but I already got it in my head, and I don't think it's hard for anybody to know where I'm going with that pick. And then, we'll close it out. But make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys hit the like button. Make sure you guys leave me a comment down below. I appreciate you guys tapping into the channel. I'm going to be doing a ton of FCS playoff breakdowns during this upcoming playoff season. So be on the lookout for those. But we will get straight into it. Okay. First things first. Montana versus Montana State. Grizz Cats. The Brawl of the Wild. It was a devastating game for Montana fans. Obviously, you guys know I'm an alum, so, heart's a little heavy today with that outcome. But it was a good game from Montana State's standpoint, and it was really good to see a Montana State team go 12-0. It's good to see a Big Sky team go 12-0, and good to see them get the 1 seed in the playoff bracket, and good to see what they're going to be able to do. They get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They've been a really strong team this year. A lot of people did not have Montana picked to win this game in the first place, so it's going to be interesting to see what they are able to do once the playoffs get here. But really exciting things going on in the FCS right now. Playoffs. All those teams that finished their regular season, some teams finished their season, some guys have finished their career. But from Grizz Cat standpoint, it was really the ground game that ended up being the difference. That's what's going to be the difference in any Montana State win. If they are able to run the ball, they're going to be very, very victorious. And they were very, very victorious yesterday. They won by 23. The home team stays victorious in this rivalry as it's been since 2019. You talk about this Montana team and you talk about their defense. They've been good this year. I think they've been good this year. They haven't been great, but they started off the season not great. They were giving up a ton of points to not good teams, and it just didn't seem like they were playing in sync. And a lot of times, it kind of relates to what you mentioned, what Hauck talks about a lot of times with, when you bring in transfers, you bring in guys who aren't so much used to the system. It takes them a minute to get their feet underneath them. And that kind of seems the way it was for this Montana defense. Some transfers on this defense, some guys who hadn't played in it previously. They haven't been playing strong football earlier in the season, but as the season got on, they seemed to play better. Not great, this Montana defense last year, I think they were giving up 18 points a game, really strong football, one of the best units in the country, and that's really what carried this Montana team last year. This year, not the case. And early on in the season, you thought the offense would be the unit that really carried the wagon and was really able to put up points. You see all the weapons that this Montana offense has. It's something... On one side of things, you love to have weapons. Another side of it is you have to be able to get those weapons the ball. And yesterday, the difference for me, when the rubber met the road and when things really got tough on third downs, on second and longs, and on passing downs, when Montana State was bringing pressure, Logan Fife was not able to step into passes and really get the ball out effectively, accurately to his receivers. He completed 18 of his 34 passes for 117 yards, and there was a lot of plays in there where had Logan Fife stepped into the pass confidently despite the pressure and delivered the ball, there were some places where Montana could have capitalized. Particularly, there was a one-on-one route where you had Aaron Fonts. It looked like a bang post, a vertical. He got inside of the defensive back. He had a step on him. Logan Fife, they bring a pressure with Neil Day. No, it was Mikado Riley and Rylan Ort right down the middle, not picked up, both of them free, and Logan Fife steps back and kind of just throws it off his back foot, and it sails over Aaron Font's head. Another one, a 2-minute drive going into halftime. Montana's putting a decent drive together. They had got, I think, 2 first downs at this point. They're faced with a third. I think it was like 3rd and 3. And they try to throw the fade to Aaron Fonts. And granted, Aaron Fonts had an opportunity to catch it over his shoulder. It was really, the ball came over the top like this. And, he tried to catch it and drag his feet in bounds. He didn't come down with the catch. But if you look back at the play and go watch my breakdown, I broke it down, I feel like nicely about where I feel it was messed up. Once again, Fife had pressure in his face. I think that was the play where the end and the D tackle became free and were in his face. The guard and tackle kind of whiffed on their blocks on that play. And, Aaron Fonts had a step. He was even. He would have been leaving at that point. If he's even, I'm leaving. And Fife just had to place it over the top, inbounds, accurately, and he didn't. So, you look at some plays like that, and then you look at the lack of success in the running game for Montana. They had 17 rushing yards. Eli Gilman had 10 for 35 and a touchdown. Nick Osmo had 4 for 35, no touchdown. Montana only had 1 touchdown in this game. That was the Eli Gilman touchdown. And then Keelan White was the leading receiver, 5 receptions, 54 yards. I mean, that really ended up being the difference. I mean, at that point, for Montana's offense, that ended up being the difference. Obviously, for Montana State's offense, their running game was the difference. But I wanted to get to that. So their offense was unable to get points on the board, and I think a lot of it was Logan Fife not being able to step into passes. But then you look on the defensive side of things. The defense was playing good football. They gave up a touchdown on the first drive. There was a false start on 3rd and 5 that extended that drive, gave them the first down without even Montana State having to even try to get the first down. And then they drove down and scored. On that first drive, they ate 9 minutes off the clock. There was 6:01 following that touchdown, that first touchdown for Montana State, a Tommy Mellott run touchdown on that. His only rushing touchdown of the game. But then you look at Adam Jones. Adam Jones rushed 25 times, 197 yards. He had an amazing game. He's looking to be Freshman of the Year in the conference, looking to be Jerry Rice Award winner, back-to-back years for the Big Sky Conference, hopefully getting the Jerry Rice Award. That would be awesome. But Adam Jones, Julius Davis started the game. He went out early on in the game in the first half. Coulter was telling me Rohan Jones also got hurt in this. It might not have been Coulter, but somebody was telling me Rohan Jones also got hurt in this game. And then you saw Brody Grebe go down. He ended up coming back in the game. Good to see him come back in the game. But Montana's defense, especially in that third quarter, it was a 23-ball game going into halftime. Montana put that 2-minute drive together, were unsuccessful on third and 3. They punted it away. No. They went for it on 4th and 3 that drive. They were unsuccessful. It was right out of reach for Nick Osmo on a swing route. They give the ball back to Montana State, just barely in Montana State territory. I think it was like on the 47, 48-yard line. Montana State drives down, kicks a 49-yard field goal, takes the 20-3 halftime lead. Now, in the third quarter, Montana had got a stop on 3rd and 2. They got a stop on 4th and, it might have been 4th and 3. They got a stop, and they were stringing together some stops, and all you needed was the offense to really put things together. It wasn't until it was a 27-3 ball game, Montana got their first touchdown of the game, and then they took the 2-point conversion to make it a 27-11 ball game. 16-point ball game, and I think at that point there was like 8 minutes left in the game. There's still an opportunity. It might have been, I think it was closer to 10 minutes left, 11 minutes actually, now that I'm thinking back, because I remember that next drive, Montana State drove down. After that touchdown, there was like 4 minutes and 45 seconds left on the clock, and it was 34-11 at that point, and the game's kind of out of reach at that point. But, 16-point ball game. At that point, if Montana can really get a stop, they can make things interesting. But, that Montana State offense kept wearing on that defense of Montana, and Montana was doing as much as they could to stop them, but at some point that offensive line of Montana State is going to eat. They are the best unit in the country, and they move people, and you see it on the touchdown run, or not touchdown, but the 88-yard run for Adam Jones. He ended up scoring on that drive, but 88-yard run for Adam Jones. The dam broke at that point, and they burst out for an 88-yard run, and it was a great. It was blocked really well by the offensive line. Seems like Ryder Meyer might have been in position to make the play. Shifted out. It seemed like he was following the offensive line as the offensive line was moving to the defense's right, and it seems like he couldn't really see the running back, and he moved out where he thought the ball would have been moving. In that zone scheme, sometimes it can be, the running back's going to hit it where the gap hits, and the gap hit inside of, Ryder Meyer now has shifted outside of where the run hit and right down the pipe for 88 yards, and that was really the backbreaker for Montana. They had them pinned deep as well. I think they had the ball on like the 5-yard line or something. They had the ball deep in their own territory, and Montana just was unable to get the stop. Montana State has put together a great season. They now are the number 1 seed. They got a target on their back. They've had a target on their back. They've been the best team one of the best teams in the country for much of the season. And now they get an opportunity to prove it in the playoffs against other competition outside of the Big Sky Conference. But they've proven it up to this point. They're the outright Big Sky champions. They've played phenomenal football up to this point. Tommy Millott has been a great leader. Brody Grebe, those guys on that team, Marcus Weir, the captains of that team, they have led this team up to where they are. And it is what it is. On Montana's standpoint, they're 8-4. They got a seed. I believe they were the 14th seed. They will be playing Tennessee State at home on ESPN2 on Saturday. That'll be an amazing game to watch. Eddie George and his staff will be coming over to Missoula. They're 9-3 out of that Big South OVC conference that got 3 playoff teams in this year. They've been playing really good football. SEMO, UT Martin, and Tennessee State being those 3 playoff teams out of that conference, but it should be a really good game for Montana. Montana's defense, if they can hold up the way they have been later on in the season, I think it should be a decent game, but it really comes down to the offense of Montana. They've been very up and down this season. Early on in the season, Montana's offense could do no wrong. They were putting up points, they were moving the ball, and they were carrying the wagon for this team. Later on in the season, it's been the defense kind of holding things up. Against Northern Colorado and Cal Poly, defensive turnovers really helped them. Against Portland State, defensive turnovers really helped the offense. And now, offense needs to get things going on their own. I felt like that Montana defense really did what they needed to do yesterday. I mean, if you can put up 35, 40 points and your defense holds the best offense in the country to 34 points, you should have a great opportunity to win this game. And unfortunately, it didn't. I think Montana State ended up having like 450 total yards of offense. So a lot of offense. They ended up having 422 yards of offense. Before the game, they were averaging, I think, 506. So you kept them under their average. Rushing yards, I think they were a little over their average. I think they were around like 303 or something like that on the season. Maybe more than that. But they had 328, so above their rushing average, and I felt like you really needed to keep them around 200 to 250 rushing yards to really have a strong chance. But even with them rushing for 328, I still felt like the Montana team had a great chance to win this game. They didn't, and congrats to the Bobcats. Amazing regular season. Playoffs are beginning. Both of these teams will be in the playoffs. The Big Sky got 5 playoff teams in, the most out of all FCS conferences. The MVFC and CAA got 4 each, and then the Big South OVC got 3, and then other conferences got 1 or 2. But it's been a great season up to this point. You guys let me know what you got about Grizz Cat this weekend. It was an interesting game. It started sleeting a little bit in the third quarter, but that ended by the time the fourth quarter came around. But it was a good game for Montana State. It was an interesting game for Montana because the offensive woes that we've seen later on in the season have really reared their ugly head. And, earlier throughout the season, you've been able to maybe point to the quarterback situation and say, they're playing this quarterback, they're playing that quarterback. That's why the offense isn't being successful. Well, this game, Logan Fife played every snap of offense, and, they still weren't successful. Part of that's on him. Maybe you can put that on Coach Pease in the play calling. But I feel like some of those throws were there. You just got to be able to stand in there. This is a good team. You got to stand in the pocket, under pressure, stare down the barrel, and make throws. Not that if he would have made this throw or that throw that it would have made a world of difference. But maybe a touchdown to Aaron Fonts on the pass that he didn't step into. Maybe a deep pass down into Bobcat territory. There was also a dropped interception from Riley Wilson. They didn't have that on the game highlight replay that I did on my breakdown, so I didn't get to talk about the Riley Wilson interception. But that is also another huge play that at that point in the game could have given Montana the lead and maybe switched up some momentum in that game. Who knows? But he dropped it, and I wish I could see it back. I can go watch it back on ESPN+, but not going to do all that. You guys let me know what you guys thought about this Montana State game. Let me know in the comments, and I will move on. Okay, so I also this week did a breakdown on North Dakota State versus South Dakota. It was an amazing game, 29-28 ball game. South Dakota wins a share of that Missouri Valley title. 3-way tie. I had talked about that earlier in the season, how there could be a 3-way tie in the Missouri Valley, and there was a 3-way tie in the Missouri Valley. Freaking amazing. Please go watch that video. I predicted it, and it freaking happened. South Dakota State 7-1, North Dakota State 7-1, and South Dakota 7-1, winning a share of that Missouri Valley title. South Dakota State gets the automatic qualifying bid out of that conference due to the head-to-head, I believe, over South Dakota. They lost to North Dakota State, but South Dakota beat North Dakota State, so I think the head-to-head over South Dakota is supreme over all of them. But yeah, it was an amazing amazing game. Cam Miller tried to put the team on his back. He had 82 rushing yards, 174 passing yards for a total of about 250 total yards during that game. He had a touchdown on the ground. He had a touchdown in the air. The passing touchdown was to Braylon Henderson. The rushing touchdown obviously was himself. Shamar Brown had another 2 touchdowns. This game, to me, this South Dakota versus North Dakota State game really came down to Aiden Bauman being able to make throws late in this game. And Javion Phelps, my goodness, he only had 3 catches in this game, and all of 3 of his catches came in clutch time. He had 1 catch, I think it was 4th and 8. Bauman, under pressure, not even really under pressure, but you got to have it. Like 3 minutes left in the game. They're down by 11 at this point. Bauman has to make a throw. He made the throw of the game. It wasn't even cover 2. It was man coverage. I think it was man coverage. Phelps got behind the defender, but the safety was leaned over to that side, and he didn't take the right angle to get to the ball, and Phelps catches the ball right behind him. They end up going to score like 2 plays later, a touchdown pass to Martins. Jack Martins of South Dakota, to bring them within 5 at that point. They went for 2. They did not get it. Next drive, Javion Phelps again. I don't know if this was on a 3rd down. I can't remember what down it was, but it was a cover 2 shot that Bauman was trying to throw. He threw a beautiful ball to Phelps. Phelps knew he was going to take the hit. He took the hit, but had the wherewithal to get his foot down in bounds. One of the best plays, all the best plays in the game went to Javion Phelps. Amazing ball from Aiden Bauman. Aiden Bauman made some amazing throws late in this game to really win in this game. The seam route that he threw to Jack Martins on the touchdown was an amazing throw too. Aiden Bauman deserves all the credit late in this game for why they were able to win this game. He made the throws when he had to make the throws. He completed 18 of 30 passes for 272 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. No turnovers, no interceptions from that standpoint, but I don't think they had any turnovers in this game at all. And that's what you got to do against a North Dakota State team. In the first half, they were having some penalties where they were behind in the sticks and really shooting themselves in the foot. But when it came down to it, Aiden Bauman was the difference. North Dakota State did everything they could. It really seems like that secondary of North Dakota State still is not up to snuff. They were the difference in this game. They gave up some big plays late in the game that really, they had an 11-point lead with 3 minutes to go in the game. When you look back at this game for North Dakota State, they're going to be looking at the All-22, looking at some of the plays that they were unable to make in the secondary, and are going to be kicking themselves because it's like, dang, we had everything right in front of us. You give up a 4th and 8 with the game on the line. You're really going to run the clock out if you complete that. It's just devastating. Devastating. I think 11-point lead with maybe more closer to like 4 minutes left in the game, but still, you get what I'm saying. Like, they had a big time lead, 11-point lead late in the game. You should win this game. A 2-possession lead with under 5 minutes to go in the game. You should win that game, and they didn't. And I know it's devastating for North Dakota State, and they're going to be watching the film, and it's going to be hard to watch. The last play of the game, not the last play of the game, but the touchdown to Javion Phelps to really close out the game. I'm checking the turnovers right now. Yeah, no turnovers from either team. Time of possession was really even, all that stuff. 19 first downs for North Dakota State, 23 for South Dakota, 16 of 12. So statistically, they're pretty even. Passing yards, South Dakota won, and rushing yards, North Dakota State won. But the last play of the game, North Dakota State, first off, South Dakota was in a 2nd and 20. 2nd and 20. North Dakota State goes into a cover 3 coverage, 1 high safety, 2/3 from their corners, and they run 3 verts on the left side of the field to their 3 receivers. Javion Phelps is the number 1 receiver. Number 2, I think, was Jack Martins or Carter Bell. I couldn't tell who was number 2. I think it was Carter Bell, actually. And then number 3 was a tight end. They run 3 verts. The tight end runs a crosshash. The number 2 receiver is running a seam. And then the number 3 receiver, Phelps, has a fade. It's on the corner. Middle, he's trying to midline. He's trying to midline the number 2 and number 1 receiver, those 2 verts. He chose the number 2 vertical, and Bauman ends up throwing the number 1 to the fade to Javion Phelps, and he walks in the end zone. He was wide open. I know a lot of people are probably looking back at that play and thinks it was a busted coverage. It was not a busted coverage. The cornerback of North Dakota State was doing what he thought was the right play. A lot of times when you get into cover 3, you're looking to throw the seam, and the corner probably knew that. And the seam looked open. Please go watch my breakdown. I talked about it in nauseum about that last play for South Dakota that won in the game. The corner was doing what he thought when you see it, it looks like he thinks Bauman is about to throw the ball to the seam. And he chooses that he like really literally goes to cover the seam, and he throws it out to Javion Phelps for the touchdown. It was an amazing game, 29-28 ball game to win the title in the Missouri Valley. What an amazing outcome for them. Interesting for North Dakota State, they lost that game but still got the trophy after the game, the Missouri Valley title trophy, which is tough. It's tough. But what an amazing outcome it was for that game. Big time implications for everyone involved during that game. It was an amazing game. South Dakota still, unfortunately, what ended up being the 4th seed behind South Dakota State and behind North Dakota State. They only played 11 games this season. They had the Portland State game canceled, but it was an awesome game. I was really happy to see South Dakota come out with the victory. I have a friend who played at South Dakota, but it was really cool to see them come away with that victory being down 11. Obviously you don't want to be a down 11. You're playing against a perennial national champion, a team that knows how to win, and you end up getting the victory in the end. Great game. I don't know if this spells problems for this North Dakota State team. I think they're a very similar team to what they were last year, but they've looked really, really good this year, especially on the ground. They've beat up on a lot of teams. They beat South Dakota State in a very close game. There's really 4, 5, 6 teams at the top of I'd really say 5 teams at the top of the FCS right now that are really, vying for that title. I would say it's UC Davis, Montana State, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, and South Dakota, who are the top 5, who I would really say are like my favorites right now in the FCS. But, there's still a ton of ball to be played in the FCS playoffs. Not a ton, but, we got some games left in the FCS. A lot of games to be played in the FCS playoffs, and it's going to be exciting. What did you guys think of this North Dakota State versus South Dakota game? What were your thoughts about the North Dakota State blunder at the end? What were your thoughts about South Dakota's ability to be able to come back from down 11 with under 5 minutes to go in the game? Give me all your thoughts. Aiden Bauman deserves MVP. He deserves everything that he's got coming to him. He played an amazing game there at the end and really allowed them to get that victory. You guys let me know what you thought about all of that in the comments, and I will move on.
In the Treasure State, University of Montana football is a way of life. Lithia Ford has long been a proud sponsor of Grizz football, and Lithia Ford of Missoula is thrilled to have several of the best Montana football seniors driving the best trucks in Montana. Aspen Sound is the premier car audio and accessory shop in Montana. Aspen Sound makes sure the boys are riding in style with tinted windows and state-of-the-art stereo systems. There's always a party in Montana. Whether you're going to a concert, a wedding, or a football game, the Montana Party Bus will get you there. Skyline Sports and ESPN MT cover the Big Sky with more depth than anyone. Check out SkylineSportsMT.com and tune in to Nuanez Now on 102.9 ESPN Missoula every day. My Montana Roots and Wear Your Roots clothing is your go-to spot for the most unique and comfortable lifestyle clothing you'll find anywhere. And get your custom t-shirts to support your favorite player. From 5 local businesses who love Montana, best of luck to the Grizz as they pursue another Big Sky Conference championship.
Okay, next I want to talk about this Sacramento State versus UC Davis game. Now, I want to say this first. Carson Conklin, I was a fan of him last year, and he's really been the main quarterback for this Sac State team this year. He's got 2,800 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. He's a freshman, redshirt freshman. He played a few games last year, but was able to maintain his freshman eligibility, his eligibility. He was able to maintain his year. He didn't play more than 4 games. He had an amazing game. 389 passing yards on 32 of 44 passing, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. He played an amazing game. Unfortunately for him, he ran into a really good UC Davis squad. Now, this is not great for this UC Davis defense, who just got awarded the 5th seed in the FCS playoffs. They get the first round bye. They gave up a ton of points to a not great UC Davis squad. UC Davis finishes the season 3-9, 1-7 in conference play. Sac State won 1 conference game. Not a great look from UC Davis. I know the one thing that is a saving grace for them is it was a rivalry game. The one victory in conference play for Sac State ended up being their victory. Where was that one victory? Oh, Weber State. They beat Weber State 51-48. But the problem for the Sac State team this year has been their defense. It's atrocious. They can't stop anybody. This shows with that 42-39 victory. There was one play late in the game where they had an opportunity. If they could have got a stop, they could have made it interesting. Land Larison made a guy touch earth on a juke move. And Land Larison was off to the races. Land Larison had an amazing game. He is my pick. I don't get to vote on the conference picks. I will be doing them on my channel later on in this video. But he is my pick for Offensive Player of the Year. I know what Tommy Mellott brings to the table. I know how good he has played this year. But Land Larison, being the leading receiver for this UC Davis squad, the leading rusher for this UC Davis squad, I mean, you cannot take anything away from this guy. 1,300 rushing yards on the season, 755 receiving yards on the season. I mean, he's amazing, man. Like, he's amazing. 5 for 9 passing this year, too. I mean, he had 23 carries, 148 rushing yards, 3 touchdowns. 4 receptions, 69 yards. 200 total yards of offense. He's had a ton of games where he's had 200 total yards of offense. He's had an amazing season. This guy is a dog. He plays great ball. He also makes things happen on special teams. But, I think Land Larson really ended up being the difference. I don't want to gloss over what Miles Hastings did. He's had an amazing season as well. He's thrown this year for 3,700 yards, 32 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Yesterday, he threw 27 to 36, 398 yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. He played an amazing game, an amazing football game. Just a great player. Samuel Batu had 5 receptions, 143 yards, and a touchdown in that game. This UC Davis offense is great. They play great football. Their offensive play caller is amazing. He knows how to scheme his guys up. He has the best offensive player in the country in Land Larson. It's hard to be wrong when you got a player like Land Larson who can make everything right. Their offensive line plays good as well. But it was an interesting game. That's why I wanted to talk about it. I know Sac State is not a great team. They're not going to be a playoff team, and they are going to have to do some soul searching this offseason. But I thought it was a really fun game to watch. UC Davis, I'd love to see where their defensive numbers stand this season because, they play good offense, but they give up a ton of points a lot of times. They held Montana, I think they held Montana to 10. I can't even remember what they held Montana to. They held Montana to 14 points when they played them. They gave up 30 to Montana State. They gave up 39 to Sac State. They gave up 38 to Eastern Washington. They gave up 26 to Portland State. They gave up 26 to Idaho. They gave up 22 to East Texas, 21 to Southern Utah. They gave up 31 to Cal. So when they play good competition, people have been able to put up points on them. And that is what concerns me for UC Davis because I know defense wins championships. Some of the best teams in the subdivision have good defense. North Dakota State, South Dakota State. Montana State even has a pretty solid defense for themselves. Not even pretty solid. They're a good defense. Montana State has a really good defense. UC Davis is in that top 5, and I see them as a contender. And outside, there's really 4, and UC Davis is on the outside looking in, but I think they could potentially sneak in there if they can shore up their defense. It's so late in the season, saying they need to shore up their defense is a hard ask, but if they really want to have a chance late in the playoffs, they're going to need to play better defense. You're going to be playing against some better offenses. People are going to be able to put up points. People are going to be able to run the ball. There's going to be small things that are going to make the difference, and bad defense is going to be able to make the difference against this team. But, they get the 5th seed. They played a great game yesterday. They put up a ton of numbers offensively. Let's see what the offensive numbers were for each team. 547 total yards of offense for UC Davis, 457 total yards of offense for Sac State. Just amazing. 6 penalties for 69 yards for UC Davis, 4 for 25 for Sac State. Sac State 1 time of possession, but that didn't matter for UC Davis. They still were able to win the game. Turnovers, each team had 1 turnover, interceptions by the quarterbacks, but it was an amazing game to watch. If you guys watched it, you guys let me know in the comments what you thought about that game. I thought it was phenomenal. I thought it was a really competitive game. Good for Sac State to go out that way. Even though they lost, I think it's good for them to go out fighting in a rivalry game. Causeway Classic, you don't want to just roll over and give them the victory. It was a really good game. It'll be interesting to see what Sac State, what kind of moves they make this offseason. What is the future for Coach Andy Thompson? Will he still be there? Will he be somewhere else? Will he get a defensive coordinator job somewhere? We'll see. It's hard to say he's going to get a defensive coordinator job somewhere else because their defense was so bad this past year, but we know what he did when he was just only the defensive coordinator under, I think it was Coach Hill at Sac State. But, they're going back to the drawing board. They're going to have some soul searching to do. But you guys let me know what you thought about the UC Davis Sac State game in the comments down below, and I will move on. Playoff season is upon us. There's going to be some amazing football played in these FCS playoffs. I cannot wait. The road to Frisco starts today. It really started back in July for this Montana State team, but it started in August for most teams. But now we are in the thick of it. First round is going to be played this Thanksgiving weekend, and we have a bracket, folks. First off, at the top of the bracket, you got Montana State as the number 1 seed, 12-0. They got some help out from South Dakota yesterday with them getting the victory over North Dakota State to win a share of that Missouri Valley Football Conference title. Montana State, 12-0, they get the first number 1 seed. They're on the whole other opposite side of the bracket of North Dakota State. They could meet in the national championship if everything works out, but we got a ton of football to be played before any of that happens. Montana State will face the winner of UT Martin versus New Hampshire. on Saturday. That game is going to be played in New Hampshire. New Hampshire gets the 16 seed. So Montana State obviously is going to be facing either the 16 seed or UT Martin. Both 8-4 teams. New Hampshire out of the CAA, they get in, and then UT Martin out of the Big South OVC, the third team in out of that Big South OVC conference. They might not have been the third team in. I think they said Tennessee State was honestly one of the last teams in, one of the last 4 in. But that's a potential second round matchup for Montana State, whoever they get to face. But that New Hampshire versus UT Martin game should be a really good game being played at 1 p.m. on Saturday in New Hampshire. That's going to be exciting. Next, you have Idaho at the 8th seed, 9-3. They get a first round bye. They don't have to play Thanksgiving weekend. They get some time off. They will be playing a night game on ESPN Plus. Whoever they're faced between Lehigh, who played 11 games this season, finished the season at 8-3. I believe they won that Patriot League. And they will play a number 9 Richmond out of the CAA. I think Richmond was the victor out of that CAA conference. I think they won that conference at 10-2. That game will be played in Richmond at 2 p.m. on ESPN Plus. Should be an exciting game there. All these games should be exciting. Hopefully we don't get any blowouts. Hopefully we get some exciting games. Next, at number 5, at the 5 seed, you got UC Davis, 10-2. They will face the winner of Southeast Missouri, who I believe won a share. No. Well, they should have won a share of it, but they didn't get the automatic. No. Tennessee State, I think, won the they both won a share of the title, but I think Southeast Missouri ended up getting the automatic qualifying because of the victory from UT Martin. UT Martin beat somebody yesterday that gave SEMO the automatic qualifying bid, but both SEMO and Tennessee State won a share of that Big South OVC title. Either way, back to Southeast Missouri. They're 9-3. They play on noon on Saturday at home because Illinois State, who is the 12th seed, will play on the road because of the high school playoffs. That is a devastating turn of events for Illinois State. They get the 9 seed, or they get the 12 seed, but they end up having to go on the road to play because of the high school playoffs. They finished the season 9-3. Southeast Missouri finished the season 9-3. I predict this is probably going to be one of the best games in the first round. The winner of that game will face against number 5 UC Davis. Next, you have South Dakota at the 4 seed. They finished the season 9-2, getting that big time 1-point victory against North Dakota State to win a share of that Missouri Valley Football Conference title. They play at 3 p.m. In 2 weeks. They will face the winner of Drake at 8-2, who won that Pioneer League out. I believe they won it outright. They lost one game to Morehead State, but they won that Pioneer League outright. They will play Tarleton State and Kayvon Britton, one of the best running backs in FCS football. There's been some great backs, and Shunderick Powell of Central Arkansas, really good back. Kayvon Britton, really good back. Obviously, Land Larison, he's a little behind these guys in terms of rushing stats, but then you got Kayvon Britton at Tarleton State. I mean, a great running back. It should be a great matchup against Drake. I predict Tarleton State will probably boat race them. Drake, they play in the Pioneer League. They're a good team outfit out of the Pioneer League, but once they get out of conference play, all Pioneer League teams, they get out of conference play, and it's really hard for them to get anything going. But that should be a decent game. You have number 3, South Dakota State at 10-2. They get the 3 seed. They play in 2 weeks at 2 p.m. in Brookings. They will play the winner of number 14, Montana. They get the 14 seed. I think a lot of people had them between 12 and 15. If you look at any of these, some people saw them a little higher than that, but 12, 15 seems right for them. They get a home playoff game against Eddie George and Tennessee State. I had a former teammate in the USFL who played at Tennessee State. He texted me as soon as the bracket was released, Tennessee State coming up to Missoula. It'll be an exciting game. I believe Skyline Sports and some other people were talking about, I think I saw Frank Gagola mention that Tennessee State has a former, I don't know if it was a former Montana coach or Montana player. He's on the Tennessee State staff, so that should be an interesting game. That is going to be played on national television on ESPN2 at 8:15 local time, 10:15 Eastern time on ESPN2. Montana 8-4 versus a 9-3 Tennessee State, the third team in out of that OVC Big South OVC conference. The winner of that game will face the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. There could be a potential rematch of Montana and South Dakota State in the FCS playoffs, in the second round of the FCS playoffs in Brookings this time. No neutral site, but that could be an interesting game for Montana. I'll save my thoughts for what I think that game could be. So far, they have Tennessee State. Tennessee State's a good team. Montana has to show up and make things happen. Next, you have 6 Incarnate Word. Now, I was interested as to see Incarnate Word get the 6 seed because I thought probably Idaho would be at 6 behind UC Davis, and I thought Incarnate Word would be at 7 and Mercer maybe 8. But, Incarnate Word gets the 6th seed. They get a first round bye. They play in a couple of weeks at 2 p.m. at home. They will face the winner of Eastern Kentucky at 8-4. I believe Eastern Kentucky is in, don't make me lie, I think they're in the, man, I'm going to have to go look it up. But either way, Eastern Kentucky will face off against Villanova at 9-3. Villanova coming out of that CAA. The CAA got 4 teams into the playoffs this year. Should be a pretty interesting game. Should be a pretty interesting game. I would honestly choose Villanova. They got the 11 seed there. They play in Philadelphia at 2 p.m. on Saturday. Right after Thanksgiving weekend, right after Black Friday, right after all those NFL games. This should be a pretty interesting game. The winner of that game will play against Incarnate Word. I'm trying to find the here. Let me see where Eastern Kentucky, what conference they play out of. Can't believe I don't know this. Eastern Kentucky. Where are we gonna find Eastern Kentucky at? They are in the, gosh, I'm going far down here. Oh, so the UAC got 3 teams in the FCS playoffs? What? Abilene Christian, Tarleton, and now let me mention this. Eastern Kentucky getting in is freaking awesome, and it's really good for the UAC conference. The UAC conference played really good football this year. Southern Utah was another team that was just out at 7-5, 6-2 in conference play. Probably those 7 wins. Eastern Kentucky having 8 wins is probably what got them in over Southern Utah. But man, Southern Utah and Eastern Kentucky and Tarleton, Abilene, they had a great season. Central Arkansas at 6-6. They kind of fell short of where I thought they would be this year. I thought that UCA Tarleton State game would be for the conference championship to finish the season. But I mean, Eastern Kentucky making it out of the UAC. Now let me mention, I talked a lot about the UAC. I didn't think the UAC was a very strong conference coming into the season. It's a bunch of teams. Like Southern Utah used to be in the Big Sky. Central Arkansas used to be in the, I believe, Southland Conference. And then North Alabama. I mean, a bunch of teams that used to be in different conferences. West Georgia just moved up. Utah Tech just moved up not too long ago. Tarleton State just moved up. Abilene Christian, maybe 10, 15 years ago, moved up. So a lot of teams that are new to the FCS and coming from different conferences to put together the UAC conference. And they get 3 playoff teams in this year. Amazing from the UAC conference. Eastern Kentucky has a tough task to go on the road to Villanova with a chance to play Incarnate Word. Next, you have number 7, Mercer at 10-2. They will face off against the winner of Central Connecticut. I thought Duquesne was going to be the playoff team. I swear up and down, Duquesne was undefeated against the FCS. They lost against Central Connecticut. Central Connecticut gets the auto bid into the playoffs out of the NEC conference. Now, I predict Central Connecticut's going to get boat raced against Rhode Island. I am predicting that right now. I don't think very highly of Central Connecticut, not even Central Connecticut. I don't think very highly of the NEC conference. It's a bunch of teams that, if there were standards to get into the FCS, I don't think anybody in the NEC would be in the FCS. These teams never compete at a high level in the FCS playoffs. They always get in, obviously, because they have an automatic qualifying bid by winning their conference. But once they get in, it's usually a guaranteed win for whoever's playing against them. If there are some NEC fans watching this, please cook me for this take. And I hope Central Connecticut wins. It makes me wrong. I love looking stupid. But they will face off against number 10, Rhode Island. 10-2, they finished the season. Rhode Island, let's go look at this Central Athletic Conference. They looked like a really good team to start the season, but their strength of schedule was abysmal. So they ended up losing the auto bid to Richmond, who got the auto bid, who won that CAA conference outright. They finished the season 7-1 in conference, finishing second in the CAA. And they finished the season overall at 10-2. So they're 10-2 facing off against Central Connecticut. I predict Rhode Island should win that game by 3 to 4 scores. Hopefully Central Connecticut can make it competitive. They play on Saturday at noon, and the winner of that game will face off against Mercer. Last but certainly not least, you got the number 2 North Dakota State Bison at 10-2. They play on 3 p.m. They play at 3 p.m. in 2 weeks. The winner of that, they will face off against the winner of Northern Arizona at 8-4, that 5th team in for the Big Sky Conference. I think Northern Arizona was one of the last 4 in as well. They play against number 15 Abilene Christian on the road. That should be a super, super exciting game to be played in the Big Sky Conference. I'm very excited for this game. Very excited for this, for Northern Arizona to see what they're able to do in the playoffs. They have a pretty decent defense. Ty Pennington, they're on their offense. He's a really good player. Should be good from that standpoint. They face Abilene Christian out of that UAC conference. The third, you got Abilene Christian out of that UAC conference, Eastern Kentucky out of that UAC conference, and Tarleton. I mean, just great from the UAC. I can't emphasize enough how awesome that is for the UAC conference and for the FCS as a whole. But that should be a pretty good game. Abilene Christian, Northern Arizona. Abilene Christian played Idaho early on in the season. They lost a close one to Idaho. Northern Arizona lost to Idaho. Can't remember the score to that Idaho Northern Arizona game, but I think that should be a pretty good game. Played at 3 p.m. in Texas for Abilene Christian. They get the 15th seed. Here's the whole bracket. I've gone down each seed. I've gone down each game. What do you guys think is the best game for the first round? I think SEMO versus Illinois State is my top pick for the best game in the first round. I also think Montana versus Tennessee State could be good. National television, Eddie George going on the road. I don't think he's made it as a FCS coach into the playoffs yet. So his first playoff appearance playing in a great atmosphere in Missoula, Montana on national television. We all know what Eddie George, well, maybe not. We might have some young viewers. Eddie George, a former Pro Bowler for the Tennessee Titans. Great running back as he played in the NFL. Eddie George, if I'm not mistaken, is Eddie George the only running back to win 2 Heismans in college football? I know he is a Heisman winner. Did he win 2 at Ohio State? You guys let me know in the comments. But Eddie George, historically great football player in the NFL and in college, and now he's taking his talents to head coaching in the FCS level, and then we'll be coming to the Mecca in Missoula to play. I will be there. Pre-game, post-game show is sure to be exciting. You guys let me know in the comments what you guys think about the bracket. What do you guys think is your top game in the first to start the first round of the playoffs? What do you guys see as some of your predicted second round matchups? So actually, let me go through that first off. I am going to say that New Hampshire is going to win. Actually, UT Martin is going to upset New Hampshire and play Montana State in Bozeman, Montana, following their first round victory. I'm going to say Richmond is going to beat Lehigh by 2 to 3 scores and face Idaho, number 8 Idaho in the Kibbe Dome. I see SEMO winning this game against Illinois State. One of the difference, I think it's going to be a really close game, but I think the home field advantage for SEMO is going to be a differentiator in that game. Unfortunate for Illinois State, they get the 12 seed, but they don't get the home field playoff advantage because of the high school playoffs. Tarleton State is going to win that game by 3 to 4 scores, and they are going to face against South Dakota in the second round of the playoffs. Against Tennessee State, Montana, I think, I don't know how many fans are going to show up for this game. I feel like Montana should win this game. I don't know much about the Big South OVC Conference, but I think Montana should be able to handle this game. Home field advantage should be a difference maker for them, depending on how many fans show up. I say maybe 16 to 20,000 will show up. Maybe, I don't think it'll be a sellout, but, some fans will show up. It's Thanksgiving weekend, so it's hard to, sell out a stadium on Thanksgiving weekend. I don't even think they didn't play Thanksgiving weekend last year, so. But it's going to be hard to fill up the stadium. I don't even think in the second round they filled up the stadium and had a sellout in the playoffs last year against, I think their first round game was against Delaware. So we will see from that standpoint. But Tennessee State and Montana should be a pretty good game. I'm going to pick Montana to face South Dakota State in a Frisco rematch from last year being played in Brookings. Eastern Kentucky, Villanova. I'm going to pick the 11th seed, the home field advantage Villanova to win that game and face against Incarnate Word. And that could end up being a really good game. Villanova was a semifinal. No, not a semifinal. They were a quarterfinal team last year. They faced against South Dakota. They played pretty good defense against South Dakota State. They played pretty good defense against South Dakota State and Brookings. It was a really windy, cold game, but South Dakota State ended up coming out with the victory. Incarnate Word versus Villanova in the second round could be one of the best games of the second round. Of the second round of the playoffs. That should be pretty exciting. But you got Villanova, Incarnate Word. I see them facing off in the second round. Villanova's going to get the victory over Eastern Kentucky. You got Rhode Island and Central Connecticut. I say Rhode Island is going to boat race Central Connecticut by 3 to 4 scores and face off against Mercer. Could be another good second round game. Mercer versus Rhode Island. That could be a game to keep your eyes on in the FCS playoffs. But I got Rhode Island facing off against Mercer. Next, I got Abilene Christian in Northern Arizona. I'm going to say Northern Arizona's defense is going to show up. They have some really good defensive backs for that Northern Arizona squad. Alex McLaughlin is one that comes to mind. Makes plays in the passing game, makes plays in the rushing game. He gets a ton of tackles. He gets sacks. He gets pass breakups. He gets sacked fumbles. He gets everything for that defense of Northern Arizona. I got them beating Abilene Christian on the road to face off against the number 2 seed North Dakota State in the second round of the FCS playoffs. Those are my picks for the first round. We can go and see the bracket after next week and see my picks for the next round. But you guys let me know what you think about the bracket. What do you guys think about my picks? Do you guys think I'm homering for Montana? Do you guys think Tennessee State's going to boat race them? You guys let me know in the comments, and I will move on. Okay, I want to give a Big Sky recap of the regular season and talk about how the Big Sky shaped up. Obviously, we know Montana State ran the table, had an amazing regular season, 12-0, get the number 1 seed. I don't remember the last time they got the number 1 seed. Somebody in the comments can let me know the last time Montana State got the number 1 seed, if they've ever got the number 1 seed. I know this is their best record in the regular season ever, most wins in the regular season, 12-0. They get they win the conference title outright. I'm looking at their defense right now. I'm looking at their defensive statistics right now. They're averaging 17 points, giving up 17 points a game, to a total of 204 over the season. They're the number 1 offense in the country. Offensive yardage, they put up a ton of points. They're able to score the ball at a high clip. They run the ball super successfully around behind that offensive line. UC Davis finishes second in the conference at 7-1, 10-2 overall. Idaho finishes third in the conference. They tie with Northern Arizona at 6-2 in conference play, 9-3. They got the 8th seed. Northern Arizona finishes 4th. T3rd, if you want to call it, at 6-2 in conference play, 8-4 overall. Montana is 5th in the conference at 5-3 overall, 5-3 in the conference play, and 8-4 overall. And then you got Idaho State at 3-5, Eastern Washington at 3-5, Weber State at 3-5, Portland State at 3-5, and then Cal Poly at 2-6, Sacramento State at 1-7, and Northern Colorado at 1-7. Northern Colorado, I don't know what you think about that Northern Colorado team. They haven't been good ever really in the Big Sky Conference. They haven't been good in the FCS at all. So from that standpoint, interesting for them to be a Big Sky team. I don't know what people think about that. Potential, move ups from some of these Big Sky teams could maybe leave Northern Colorado more competitive in this conference. Who knows what happens to the Big Sky if Montana State, UC Davis, Idaho, if some of those bigger teams, Sac State, if they leave. I mean, what will be left of the Big Sky if teams leave? But the top of the Big Sky, I think, is really strong. The Big Sky getting 5 playoff teams in this year is really, really strong. That's a really good look for the Big Sky Conference. They play strong football, but they got to finish the deal. Somebody's got to win the national championship. The team seems to be Montana State, who are going to be the favorite. They're not even the favorites. After the selection show, they did the percentages of who they think is going to win the championship. They had North Dakota State at like 48%. They had South Dakota State the next highest odds at like 30-something%, and then Montana State third at 17%. So already ESPN is picking against Montana State. I'm sure they probably saw that. That's probably going to be plastered on their wall. Nobody believes in them. Hopefully they can go shock some people. But I think the Big Sky played a good season. It was very competitive. Some strong teams at the top. I really like where the Big Sky is right now. There's some good competition going on in the Big Sky. The middle of the pack, Idaho State, Eastern Washington, they play strong football. They were able to get some big victories. I don't know if so much Eastern Washington was able to get some big victories, but Weber got a big victory in Montana on the road. Idaho State beat some good teams this year. Not some good teams, but, they finished the season 5-7, so not terrible, but not great either. Kobe Tracy was one of my potential picks for Big Sky newcomer of the year, but then I had to look at Kamari Mounier Bailey, and he had a great season this year. So, but you guys let me know what you guys think about this. What you guys thought about the Big Sky Conference this year. What did you guys think about the play in the Big Sky Conference? I thought it was pretty high level of football being played in the Big Sky Conference this year, and I'm really excited to see what the playoffs are going to be for the Big Sky. Hopefully all the Big Sky teams can make it to the second round, but the games have to be played, so we will see. You guys let me know what you thought about the Big Sky Conference regular season this year, and I will move on.
Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Right down the road, pump it up, oh yeah.
Okay, we don't have any defensive picks this week. I'm only doing offense. Once again, I'm so sorry for all my defensive people, but there were some really good offensive games this week in the Big Sky Conference. First off, I'm talking about my top Big Sky performances from Week 13, the final week of the regular season for Big Sky players. 1, you got Lan Larison. 23 carries, 148 yards, 3 rushing touchdowns on an average of 6.4 yards a carry, 4 receptions, 69 yards on an average of 17.3 yards a catch. Lan Larison, I think, should be the pick for the Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. Back-to-back seasons with Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. I think he's a lock for Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year. He's like tops in the country in all-purpose yards. I mean, he's their leading receiver, their leading rusher. I say it every week. He's got a ton of touchdowns. He puts the ball in the zone. He's a great player. 755 receiving yards, 1,321 rushing yards. I mean, come on. This dude is a baller. And, this UC Davis team would be completely different without him. They didn't have him for some of the season last year, and they were a different team without him. So I think it's hard to pick against Lane Larison as Offensive Player of the Year, but we're talking about the top Big Sky performances. Next, I got Miles Hastings, also UC Davis. He was 27 of 36, 398 yards, almost 400 passing yards, 3 touchdowns and an interception. He played in amazing games. I'm excited to see what Miles Hastings can do in the playoffs. I'm excited to see what UC Davis can do in the playoffs. I think it's been a minute since they've made the playoffs, and I don't know if they've had a ton of success in the playoffs. Tim Plow, that squad, I think their defense needs to play better, but excited to see what he was able to do yesterday. Number 3, I got Carson Conklin of Sac State. Now, this is a player who I think some teams in the Big Sky, some teams at potentially the FBS level might be looking at. He's a freshman quarterback. They had a decent offensive line. Their offense wasn't really the problem this year. It was really their defense that was the problem. Their offense has always been able to put up points, but their defense is just not great. The Sac State defense is not great, and it showed this year. Carson Conklin was 32 of 44, 389 yards, 5 touchdowns, 1 interception. That is a player who, if he doesn't transfer, I will be surprised. He played a great season this year. I think he had somewhere upwards of like 3,000 passing yards on the season, 8 interceptions. I think he had like 28 touchdown passes, something like that. But an amazing season. If Adam Jones doesn't win Freshman of the Year in the Big Sky Conference, it's because of Carson Conklin. Carson Conklin is a quarterback. He played great. But I see Adam Jones getting it because he's on the number 1 team in the conference. He's on the champions. He's on the number 1 seed. I mean, that's usually what is heavily favored. Montana was the outright Big Sky Conference champions last year, and Eli Gilman won that Freshman of the Year in the Big Sky Conference. But Carson Conklin, great season. He had a great game yesterday, almost 400 passing yards, 5 touchdown passes, and 1 interception. Next, I got number 4. I got Nate Thomas of Idaho. 21 carries, 170 yards, no touchdowns, 8.1 yards a carry. He had a really good game. Idaho closed out their season with a victory against Idaho State. They get the 8th seed in the playoffs, so they will get a first-round bye, but Nate Thomas had a really good game. At number 5, last but not least, having an amazing game, putting the Montana State team on his back behind that big offensive line, Adam Jones, the freshman, the Jerry Rice Award hopeful, the Big Sky Conference Freshman of the Year hopeful. He had 25 carries, 198 yards, 2 touchdowns, 7.9 yards a carry. I actually met Adam Jones' parents on Friday evening in Bozeman. We were out at some bars. I can't even remember what the bar name was, but I met his parents. Awesome people. They raised a great football player, but they're awesome people. They live out of Missoula. Obviously, Adam Jones is out of Missoula. Crazy to think that Adam Jones got out of Missoula. I have no idea how that happened, but great player from Sentinel in Missoula. He had a great game. He was probably the MVP of that game. I know they put up player of the game and they said it was Rylan Hort, but I would pick Adam Jones for MVP of that game. He had a long 88-yard run that got them down. That was really one of the backbreakers for that Montana defense that had been playing pretty strong defense up to that point. But those are my top performances in the Big Sky of the last regular season, in the last regular season game of the season. You guys let me know what you guys think about that, and I will move on. Okay, I want to talk about my picks for Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year, Newcomer of the Year, and Coach of the Year. Now, the Defensive Player of the Year pick, I was kind of in between a few players, and honestly, it could be interchangeable. Well, it couldn't even be interchangeable with Newcomer of the Year, but here's what I'm going to say. You'll see when we get there. My Big Sky Offensive Player of the Year pick is Lane Larison, UC Davis. 255 carries, 1,321 rushing yards, 14 touchdowns on an average of 5.2 yards a carry, 58 receptions, 755 yards, 6 touchdowns through the air for a total of 20 touchdowns, almost 2,000 all-purpose yards on the ground and through the air, 13 yards a catch through the air, receiving, I think he's a lock for Offensive Player of the Year. I think once you see the body of work he's put together, I think he really put a bow on it yesterday against Sac State. I know what Tommy Mellott brings to the table. I'm not trying to discount Tommy Mellott. I think Tommy Mellott should and will win the Walter Payton Award this year, which will be an amazing accolade for him. I mean, he's been a legend at Montana State. He is the player of all players. I know they're going to hold him in high regard in Montana State for a long time with the likes of Sonny Holland and all the players that I was hearing about this weekend while I was in Bozeman. But, I think Tommy Mellott is a great player, but Lane Larison has done something different this year. He was Offensive Player of the Year last year. I think he's going to go back-to-back in the Big Sky Conference and win another one. Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. Now, I think this is what I'm going to say. Keyshawn James Newby is my pick for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, but I think if he doesn't win it, I think it'll be Kamari Mounier-Bailey out of Weber State. And the only reason why I think Kamari Mounier-Bailey may not win it is because he wasn't on a very winning team. But I think if Mounier-Bailey wins Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, I think it'll be well worth it, and you'll understand when I say the stats. But if he doesn't win it, if Mounier-Bailey wins it, my newcomer of the year is different, and I'll talk about that when I get there. But Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year, Keyshawn James Newby, 54 total tackles, 30 solo, 9.5 sacks. A lot of those coming in the preseason, but not in the preseason, but in the non-conference play against Oregon and Wyoming. He had 3 against Wyoming, 2 against Oregon. I mean, 2 really good teams. I mean, Wyoming wasn't great, but Oregon, I think they're still number 1 in the country right now. Really good game from Keyshawn James Newby to get 2 sacks, and they were right there in that game late in the game with a second-string quarterback late in that game. 9.5 sacks, 13.5 tackles for loss, 3 forced fumbles, and a pass breakup. He is my pick for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. He's a great pass rusher. Kind of fell off late in the season, but I think he had a strong enough campaign to warrant potentially getting Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. Big Sky Freshman of the Year, Adam Jones out of Montana State. Now, Carson Conklin could be another player who potentially gets it. I don't think he gets it because he was on a losing team. I think Adam Jones is a lock for that pick. 125 carries on the season, regular season, 908 yards, 9 touchdowns, 7.3 yards a carry. I mean, just an amazing season. A ton of long, big-time runs behind that offensive line at Montana State. He had an amazing season. I mean, he's had a really good freshman year. He's a redshirt freshman. He's up for the Jerry Rice Award. I mean, that's my pick for Big Sky Freshman of the Year. Last but not least, well, 2 more awards actually. Big Sky Newcomer of the Year. I have Kamari Mounier-Bailey. I think he transferred from not Idaho, but somebody was from Idaho. I think he might have been from Idaho, or he was from Fresno State. His last 2 schools were Fresno State and Idaho. I think he most recently came from Idaho, but he had 50 total tackles on the season, 31 solo, 9 sacks, and 18.5 tackles for loss. That is a Defensive Player of the Year resume, but once again, they were not a strong outfit this year. They weren't a great team, so I think his statistics warrant Defensive Player of the Year consideration, but his team wasn't that great, so I don't think he can win Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. But if he wins Defensive Player of the Year, and he beats out Keyshawn James Newby for Defensive Player of the Year, I see the newcomer of the year being Kobe Tracy. I took the stats off when I put Mounier-Bailey in here, but Kobe Tracy, transfer out of Utah Tech. Great statistics this year, like 3,700 passing yards, something ridiculous. A ton of touchdowns, not a lot of interceptions. I mean, he played a good season. They throw the ball all over the place. He had a really good year. I could see him be a newcomer of the year and potentially maybe beating it over Mounier-Bailey. I don't know. I think it's a toss-up with Mounier-Bailey and Kobe Tracy, but we will see. And then, obviously, Coach of the Year, Brent Vegan out of Montana State, out of Bozeman. He's come over at Montana State, and he's done nothing but win. He's got an amazing win percentage, and it culminated this year into a great season. He's already went to a national championship in his first year. They played in 2021 against North Dakota State. They lost to Cam Miller, what's his name? Christian Watson, those guys at North Dakota State. But, he's had a great season. I don't think it's hard. It's a hard pick for Coach of the Year. I think usually the conference championship team is going to get Coach of the Year because you got to do a good job coaching to get your team to win the conference title. But yeah, Coach Hauck won it last year. They won the conference outright. This year, the Bobcats won the conference outright, and Brent Vegan should rightfully be the Big Sky Coach of the Year. You guys let me know what you guys think of these picks. I think there could be, if there's any other people for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year that you guys think are deserving, please let me know. I think a Montana State defender, maybe Makeda O'Reilly, could sneak in there. But the hard thing with the Montana State players is they didn't play a ton of ball throughout the season because they were beating up on so many people. So their stats aren't great. But if the coaches aren't looking at stats, I think there could be a few players on that Montana State defense that could rightfully, maybe not a few, but maybe 1 or 2 players, maybe 3 players on that Montana State defense that could win Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. But I think Keyshawn James Newby and Kamari Mounier-Bailey are 2 of my top picks for Big Sky Defensive Player of the Year. You guys let me know what you guys think about that. Brent Vegan, Coach of the Year. You guys let me know what you think about all these picks, and I will move on. Okay, last but certainly not least, we are going to preview the first 2 FCS playoff games for the Big Sky Conference. You got Northern Arizona versus Abilene Christian in Abilene, Texas, and you got Tennessee State coming to Missoula to play Montana on ESPN2 on national television. That should be an amazing game in the first round of the FCS playoffs. Both of them should be amazing games. 8-4 Northern Arizona versus 8-4 Abilene Christian out of the UAC. And then you got Montana playing 8-4 Montana playing a 9-3 Tennessee State out of the Big South OVC, a 3-bid league in the Big South OVC, a 3-bid league out of the UAC. I really like Northern Arizona to lean on their defense. That Abilene Christian offense throws for a ton of yards. I like the defensive backs of Northern Arizona. I think if their defensive backs can hold up in the passing game, I think they should be able to come away with the victory. They are on the road. I don't know how much Abilene Christian, like how much their stands and how much their fans show up during those games, but I think it could be an interesting game for Abilene Christian in Northern Arizona. With Montana and Tennessee State, this game is going to be close. I think this game is going to be a tight game, and I think Tennessee State is going to come in here with something to prove. They just won a share of that Big South OVC title with Southeast Missouri. They get the automatic qualifying bid out of that SEMO got it because of the UT Martin victory. But they get into the playoffs. They were actually one of the last 4 into the playoffs, but they get in, and they are coming to Missoula. I don't know how packed that stadium will be during that game. I will be there, but it's going to be an exciting game on national television at 8:15 p.m. local time. That is Mountain Time on ESPN2. That Northern Arizona East Abilene Christian game will be played at 1 p.m. on ESPN+. It should be a great first day of FCS playoff games. I'm going to be watching all of them. I'm going to be glued to the television. I cannot wait. It's going to be super exciting. I'll get to watch most of the games too because Montana plays so late in the day. So it's going to be exciting. What do you guys think about these two Big Sky matchups for these teams? What do you guys think about the matchups? What do you guys think will be the outcome? I talked about it earlier in the video who I think will win, so I don't really want to go down that, but it's going to be exciting for the Big Sky Conference. You guys let me know what you think in the comments, and I will move on. Okay, that's going to do it for my video this week and for my audio this week for you, those of you who are listening. I appreciate you guys for tapping into the channel. I appreciate you guys tuning into the Big Sky Breakdown Podcast Network for listening as well. I appreciate all the listeners. I appreciate everybody who tunes in to the channel. I appreciate everybody who tunes in on Skyline Sports Big Sky Breakdown Podcast to listen as well. I thank you guys. It's been a great regular season. It's going to be an amazing playoff season. We'll see how far the Big Sky Conference goes. Montana State is that wagon this year that the Big Sky Conference needs to ride all the way to the championship. But if not them, hopefully somebody. We will see. But it's going to be exciting. There's not going to be an under the helmet this week. We did not do under the helmet with the running backs this week because of the rivalry game, and I thought there was initially going to be a banquet, but I guess they didn't do the banquet this year because of the Finn and Porter, where they usually do it, is under construction. So they didn't do it this year, and that's why we didn't do the under the helmet. So we're not going to be having it today. And also, like, Brawl of the Wild, you know. So no under the helmet this week, but please tune into all the breakdowns that I got dropped. I dropped the North Dakota State versus South Dakota breakdown, and I also dropped the Montana versus Montana State breakdown. 2 really good breakdowns. There's some good football being played in those games. I diagnosed some of the plays that are happening in there, so please go check those out. I will catch you guys next week for my video following the first week of the FCS playoffs. We will be reacting to all the games being played in the FCS playoffs. I'll give my thoughts on everything. I'll give my thoughts on the outlook of the next round going forward, and we'll give some predictions, and we'll talk all about it. But this is going to conclude the regular season for the Big Sky Conference. So for those of you who tune in for me to talk about some of your teams, great season. I will talk to you guys next year. Hopefully you guys are still tuning in for the playoffs, but it's going to be an amazing playoff season. I appreciate you guys for tapping in, and I will catch you guys next week. See you later.